We are with Professor Emeritus of Jewish History and Literature of the Hellenistic period, Joseph Sievers, from the Pontifical Biblical Institute. It's my great pleasure to be with you, Joseph. We know each the other since many, many years ago, and really a very nice friendship we built up after so many meetings. The first one was in Buenos Aires when I learned to know you, and afterwards in Rome and in other parts in the world. And you are a great scholar, a recognized scholar of the Hellenistic period, and especially, I would say, the time of the second temple. I would say that the time of the since the time of the Maccabees, you wrote a very important book on that, on this issue, and of course the time of Jesus. But you are also a great member, an important member of the Focolare movement. What is the Focolare movement? And the second question, how is that the Focolare movement devoted so many efforts for the interfaith dialogue?
Okay. Well, the Focolare movement started in 1943 with a woman at that time, only 23 years old, Chiara Lubich, who in the midst of World War II asked herself, what can we do at this time? What is it worth living for? The last moments or the last years or decades of our lives. And she felt that the important thing was to give her life to God. But that meant immediately to give it to Him in and through other people, in the poor, in the people in need. And there were desperate needs, physical needs, but also questions. What happens in such terrible suffering? She lived in northern Italy, where the war at that time was causing terrible damage. Of course, it was not directly the Shoah, but still for a young person growing up with bombs falling sometimes a dozen times a day, and soldiers, Nazi soldiers around, that was not an easy situation. And out of that, the desire to make a new start, and out of that began a small group, at first only of young women, then also men, then also families, people of all walks of life, trying to build unity in such destruction, build unity among people of different backgrounds. In her own family, that's where it started. Her father was a socialist, her brother a communist, her mother a devout Catholic, and she in some way, one would think, followed her mother as a Catholic, but she was very close to both her father and her brother. So dialogue among differences was something that was part of her initial family experience. And then this work for unity among people of different backgrounds continued later. This group grew and into different countries. And for example, already in the late 50s, there were requests for some people who were members of this group to come to East Germany as doctors, as nurses, but not to fight communism, but to bring assistance and to bring the love that was based for them on the gospel commands, and which are based in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, love for God and neighbor. And so out of that experience then came also ecumenical encounters, where it was found that Catholics and Protestants could share this way to live for out of the scriptures, to live the scriptures, and to work for unity in diversity. And then in the later 1960s, the first interreligious contacts in Africa, in the Middle East, and then in 1977, Chiara Lubich received the Templeton Prize for Progress in Religion. And there, meeting with Jews, with Hindus, with Muslims, with Buddhists, and finding that there's a lot we can share and we have to share, and the need for interreligious dialogue and the possibility on the basis of what is called the Golden Rule, which is present in many different religious traditions. In Judaism, it is found already in the book of Tobit, but then in a famous saying of Hillel, and in the New Testament, it's attributed to Jesus himself. Do unto others what you want them to do to you. So this is in part the basis of that dialogue. And for Focolare, this has become a very central issue even in its statutes, but also in its practice. Focolare is recognized by the Catholic Church, by first by Pope John 23rd, and then by later popes, but it is also in very good relationship with leaders in different churches and in different religious traditions, and also with people who have no religious background, but find that ethics requires that one work with people of different backgrounds.
You know, Joseph, that the first time I was invited by the Focolaris to Rome, to the special place in
Castel Gandolfo.
Castel Gandolfo, yeah, which was part of the. It was a gift. The place that you have in Castel Gandolfo was a gift from John the 23rd, that he gave to the Focolare movement, because it's one is touching the other. The Pope's residence in Castel Gandolfo is touching your place, your
John
building.
Paul II gave it to us.
Yeah. Now,
John 23rd built it, but John
Paul II
gave it to us.
Yeah. So there in the first years of the 2000s, was my first meeting there. And afterwards, I was invited several times. And really what I can say is that I had very deep dialogical encounters. I felt that you are not in your dialogue with the Jews on the beginning of a way, but that then already you had an important development of the deep sense of dialogue and what dialogue means. You know, as the late Rabbi Kleniki used to say, the beginning is tea and sympathy, but afterwards we have to talk, open the hearts, and as Pope Francis used to say, and to make a room in your heart in order to receive the messages of the other, to know the other. So now, where are we in the dialogue nowadays? What do you consider that should be the next steps specifically in the Jewish Catholic dialogue? What is important to put as an aim for our short future or next future? Now I have to complete this sentence saying, after having or living in such a difficult drama as we are suffering nowadays from the pandemic, a humankind drama, a world drama. Taking this into account, and before the pandemic, we asked ourselves also, what should be the next steps? So let us take these two motivations, these questions. From one side, what should be, in general, as we ask ourselves before the pandemic, and now taking into account this pandemic reality.
Well, maybe I can just mention some examples. Some time ago, I was in touch with an Israeli friend, actually a former diplomat, and about organizing something together. And then he told me that there would be a discussion of Paul, of the Apostle Paul, at the Hebrew University in a seminar. And so he asked me if I wanted to participate. So I wrote to the organizer, whom I knew at the Hebrew University, and they sent me the link. And so we had a seminar at the Hebrew University on Paul with participants from, well, the lecturer that time was a German Protestant professor from the University of Bonn, with some others from his university, some people from the Hebrew University, and me, a Catholic from Rome, participating with these people in a seminar. This would have been theoretically possible before the pandemic, but it would not have been thinkable. Okay. Similarly, the other day, there was a webinar of young people from various countries, Christians, somehow associated with Focolare, who wanted to know about Judaism, who had very little background knowledge, but we were able to include a rabbi, I think a former student of yours, Silvina Schemen, in this international webinar, and she left a marvelous impression among these many young people from different countries. And I think here we have several aspects. One is to get the dialogue to the next generation, to the young people, to include them as active participants while being learners, but also active contributors to this. And using the means that were available before, but that have become necessary now in this time. Of course, such things can never replace personal meetings, but they can go a long way, so that when a personal meeting actually does take place, it is already prepared and the ground is prepared for that. And some of the possible prejudices are already removed.
So I learned from your words some I deduce from your words some very interesting conclusions. Conclusion one, okay, the pandemic is really a drama, but we can learn from this drama that the technology we had before the pandemic and we didn't use, we didn't make a great use of it, okay, can be this technology approved an examination. The examination is that you prepared with the Focolare, with the Hebrew University, and having, as we are, you are in Italy, I am in Philly, and we are attached, and we are doing something for the dialogue. The second point is to work with the new generations and transmitting them the idea of dialogue. I ask always myself, as many people, but to go ahead about intellectual, about knowledge in our dialogue is part of the dialogue. It's part of our dialogue. It's very, very important. But what can we do for the simple people, for the people who is not attached with the knowledge? Because this is a main issue. How can we approach? Is it possible that through our dialogue, can we do something important in order to bring a little bit more peace and quiet to, I would say, to the person of the street. So we use, this is a very Argentinian expression. If you asked me when I prepared the book with the then Archbishop of Buenos Aires, the current Pope Francis, is our idea was, okay, let us give a message to the simple person, to the person of the street. We Jews have a great problem these days. We see a growing of anti-Semitism throughout the world. What occurred in the Middle East the last weeks was very, very sad. But parallelly, this produced a wave of anti-Semitism. And the anti-Semitism, which expressed itself as a hate towards the Jews on one side, or parallelly saying that no, we like Jews, we don't like the state of Israel, and not necessarily the politics of the government of the state of Israel, but the existence of the state of Israel. So how can we work in our dialogue in order to contribute to dissemble this and this kind of expressions of hate. Not, of course, I am giving you an example from the Jews, but the same occurs with many other people in the world suffering from hate. What can we do? It's possible to do something.
Well, I think we have to be realistic that we by ourselves cannot simply say we'll overcome all this, but maybe some things can be done. And I see also my work on the Pharisees in this light. That is, the Pharisees are perhaps the most specific, most ancient group that is subject to prejudice and misunderstanding. And through the conference to which you contributed, and through the book that we are publishing on that basis, we want, on a scholarly basis, but say something to a much broader audience. I don't know if and how we'll reach that audience, but if the idea that stereotypes about Pharisees, but also about Jews, about Judaism, about Israel, are wrong, because if we look closer, we see that there's no basis for such stereotypes. Then we can do something. And I added to the volume something that wasn't said at the conference, that what happens if we apply the golden rule specifically to the Pharisees. do not do to the Pharisees what you don't want to be done to you. So don't simply take stereotypes as true, but look more deeply. See if how about if you consider a Pharisee your friend, how would you talk about him or her? What would you do with them? And I think to some extent, for non-Jews, Christians, and others, applying the golden rule to our Jewish neighbors, to Israel, could go a long way without the necessity to understand every detail of the history and of the present, but it would change the attitude of people.
It's a great answer, Joseph. It's a great answer. For the people who are going to listen to our conversation, what I would like to stress, to underline specifically, is that you were one of the organizers in the Pontifical Biblical Institute, or in the Gregorian University, of a meeting which gathers scholars from throughout the world in order to analyze the very controversial theme of the Pharisees. Why very controversial? Because in the Middle Ages, Pharisees were a name that through which the church, or that the church uses like an insult against Jews. In our days, when priests or even the Pope, when he quoted the name Pharisees, many Jews, having in their memories what occurred many years ago, said, how is he using this word? And I remember that in one of my conversations with Pope Francis, he answered to me, but I have not another choice. I'm quoting the Gospels. So you had the courage, the spiritual courage to say, this is a very a theme that separates, that makes a gap between Jews and Catholics, and we have to face this gap, to work. And you organize this meeting, and now I hope that very shortly we will see the book with a short version of the many contributions from experts in the world on the theme of Pharisees. And it's very important, because in the future, in conversations between people who are not experts, you can quote this, you can bring this book and show, what are you talking? First and foremost, you have to read this book. Joseph, have a nice day. I thank you a lot for these reflections. And let us hope that the pandemic will over in a very short time, and we have the possibilities to meet in Jerusalem, in Rome, maybe in Philly, Buenos Aires. I don't know. I'm in the moving to Philly, to United States.
Okay, well, Thank you so much. And I've just been able to mention a few things. Perhaps if you give me 2 more minutes, I want to
Please.
mention another aspect entirely, but maybe closer to you or some of the listeners. This spirituality of the Focolare has not only worked through dialogue between people, but also led to concrete initiatives. For example, at Fordham University, there is an institute on religion, law, and lawyers' work, which brings together Catholic and Jewish lawyers and law professors, and also includes some Muslim participants, and they discuss together, for example, combating online child exploitation or racial equity and interfaith cooperation in healthcare practices, and so on. So very concrete issues at the intersection of law and religion, but seen from together from Jewish and Christian perspectives. So this might be help. I can send you the link to that institute, and might just be something that
Please.
is closer to home for many of you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. This reminds me when I received from the Vatican an invitation to be part of the gathering in order to condemn all kind of slavery in human reality, and to ask from all the governments in the world to condemn, to consider all kinds of slavery a crime of lesa humanidad. This reminds me. Yeah, this is the great things that the dialogue can offer to the world.
Okay,
Joseph, as
okay.
always, a great pleasure. Shalom.
My pleasure, and all the best to you, and till we meet again.
Yes.
Okay, when you come to Rome.
Hope personally and very soon.
Yeah, okay, fine. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.